I'm doing this again. It'll be shorter today. I'm sure. Um, it's good that I'm doing this again. I should be doing this again. Uh, this is meant to be a snapshot of concepts, a snapshot of thoughts, and so taking a snapshot every day should allow me to express more. The thumbnail demonstrated the fact that it still hasn't been 24 hours, so I still can't live stream to my account that I set up expressly for this purpose. So I have to find a way to take these first two journal entries and move them over to that channel. I'm also a little bit torn because I've heard that there are some folks who actually saw my first journal thing, and that makes me feel a little bit more pressure to talk to somebody other than myself. But I'm going to try my best to ignore that because the intent of this was to document thoughts as a journal, not to present and be a personality or something. I'm not trying to curate content. I'm trying to make a record of thoughts, and I'm going to try to do my best to keep that in mind. Algorithm be damned. So let's see. Thoughts today. There are a couple of things today that definitely struck my mind that I wanted to try to get down on paper or digital paper, video, whatever you call this. I can't remember all of them, so I'll probably know them as I go through. One of them is I started rewatching Network today. Network is a film from 1976 that ended up being wildly prophetic about personality television journalism, despite the fact that it was meant to be parody and satire at the time. So unfortunately, a lot of the things about Network were true, and it was inevitable that they were true. When you look at longer time scales in history, it fits. But I think it was written maybe a little bit more prescient than they intended it to be at the time. They were just trying to point out some real problems with some comically terrible outcomes that just, I mean, when you're living in them, it's less comical. So anyway, watching that again, and emotionally it's harder to take now, because the first time I saw it, it was sort of like this disconnected Metal Gear Solid 2 kind of feeling of like, oh man, it's great to intellectually engage with some of this stuff, and now it's a little bit more, I think I've read this story before, I think I know where this goes, and also I'm living in it. Ugh. Anyway, so we might get the chance to finish it later. It was Caitlin's first time to watch it, so I don't know yet what her impression of it is. I think she thinks it's entertaining and obviously also a little bit prophetic, but I was doing my best to hold myself together while we were watching it again. Unrelated to Network, some of the things that I was thinking about today were, I think after I got done with this last night, I did peek in my book a little bit more. I was trying to understand this concept of free market. So one of the things that those are some loaded words in today's vernacular, because usually when somebody says free market, you think free market capitalism, and when you think free market capitalism, you think of all the loaded conversation that goes along with discussing capitalism. And I mean, if you are at all, for a user of YouTube, then you probably have watched a few videos on opinions about capitalism. I'm not going to dive into that. I'm not going to take that bait right now. I'm instead going to backpedal and talk about this idea of free market, because I think this idea of free market is a challenging one, because I'm not exactly sure what it means. I'm really not sure what it means. And not only that, I mean, it sounds good. Those are good terms, right? A market is a marketplace. That's where commerce happens. That's the foundation of economics and trade. It's where you get the things that you need to survive, and you get the things, you sell the things that you create with your labor and your ideas. So market is a positive term, and free is absolutely a positive term. Freedom is the basis of everything that we believe. And I mean, freedom itself, there's a sarcastic modern twist to that word, because the idea is, it's really just a brand word for American empire. So like, to deliver freedom really means to bomb the crap out of. Um, so yeah, okay. So free is fr- free maybe is a little bit more ambiguous than I intended it to than we intended it to be, especially when you talk about free in terms of civil liberties. I mean, you can only really be tongue in cheek about that, right? Like equality. Um, does it exist? I mean, it's on paper, right? If you plug your ears and close your eyes, maybe. I mean, it's a great idea. It doesn't seem to be happening. Um, anyway, so free market, good words, good combination of words. Possibly so good that they must be crafted in some way to represent something, right? Because if you've taken two so objectively either neutral or positive terms and use them to describe something abstract, then there must be some sort of shell game shenanigans going on, right? Um, so what is free market? Well, there's a couple different things that it could be, and they seem to be contradictory. One of the things that free market could be is the ability for anybody to participate in an open marketplace, buy and sell, come up with good ideas, contribute them to the marketplace, see whether or not people like to buy them, and then who knows? If it's good, you'll stay in business and you'll survive and thrive, maybe open more stores. If it's not good, then it won't float, and you'll have to go try something else. But the point is, anybody can join, anybody can get in or get out. There's total equality before the market. Um, that no matter who you are or what you do, you always have the opportunity to open a business, go set up a stall somewhere, and sell your products. And if they sell, then you win. So yeah, free market means go nuts. Free market means total opportunity, equitable opportunity. Anybody is able to go to an existing marketplace and set up an additional stall and challenge the status quo of what's already being sold there. Anybody's free to come up with a new, better idea on how to do things in the future. The Industrial Revolution sort of falls in line with the idea of free market, where previously you had manual labor being the way that majority of things were done, or all things were done, and then now you start to have a couple of things that are being done through some sort of automated process, and therefore more efficient and requiring less labor and time, and everybody benefits because value is produced in less time with less effort. So those sorts of things couldn't exist if you were dependent on needing to pay people. So weird little rabbit trail. But if you have a burger flipping robot and you have people who need burger flipping jobs, otherwise they're gonna just go on unemployment because they have no other thing they can do with their lives, then the burger flipping robot actually becomes a problem, because that, even though it might be more profitable in the long run, even though it might improve the service, even though it might decrease the costs associated with producing a product, and that value should go on to the customers, you have this this additional workforce over here that stands to lose, and there's nothing else we can do with those folks. Um, Free market kind of implies that you do what's best for the customers, and there will be winners and losers. And usually the losers are the ones who are part of the status quo. Usually the losers are the wool when cotton became a thing, oil when solar became a thing. Like there's uh, the the free market concept in that sense. Uh, it's good for the little guy, I guess, because anybody with it from any background who has something to offer can come in and participate just as well as anybody else, regardless of what their established presence is. So that's good. That's a good idea of free market. The other interpretation of free market is the exact opposite of that. The other interpretation of free market is that in a marketplace, businesses, participants in a particular market can behave in whatever way allows them to further their business. So like if you're doing business in a particular market, then whatever allows you to go down the path of pursuing profits and staying in business and doing better for yourself is good. So an example of that, my freedom as a business in the market might say, well, okay, we've got some competition, but we've got like a 40% market share, which might actually be the largest presence in this particular market that currently exists. So what are some things we can do? Well, we can make some financial decisions that might result in some really good business outcomes in the long term. Like, what if we purchase our next competitor? Then we will go from a 40% market share to a 70% market share. And now all of a sudden we have the ability to fix prices in a lot of different regions. That allows us to decrease the amount of money that we spend providing services because we don't have to compete so hard. And it allows us to increase the costs that we charge for services because there's less competition. So this is a monopoly. You're now entering the territory of a monopoly, sole control over a market. And I mean, for me as a business owner, in order to promote my business, in order to get the maximum value out of my business, that makes sense that I would make that choice. And if I'm free to make that choice because, the market is free and I can, as a business, do what I want, then of course I'm going to make that choice. And of course everybody's going to suffer for it. And it also becomes problematic when there's a innovation in the marketplace, when there's a disruption. So if I am, selling oil that powers the majority of energy production, then if there becomes a more efficient, more cost efficient, or more resource efficient, or arguably more financially tenable alternative energy source, then I can purpose my existing resources toward doing whatever I can within the market to change factors to make it so that that business can't compete. One good example of that I think still happens is Rockefeller's apparently when that was like the monopoly of oil in the United States. Whenever anybody would start selling fuel in a territory that already had Rockefeller presence, they would crank the cost of oil or fuel, gasoline, way down. Nobody could compete. The other business would dry up. And then, having weathered the storm, they would bring the price back up after the competition was gone. So that's an investment that you can make that has some financial cost, but in the long run has more financial reward. So, monopolies, price fixing, competition, underhanded competition, driving new ideas out, preventing disruption in your market, or even going so far as to work toward crafting legislation that protects your marketplace, like arranging for subsidies because you can't compete in your own market anymore because of disruptive technologies or alternative energy sources, or allowing, going into the legislative arena and making it so that it's not possible for competition to get a foothold in your arena because you've allowed yourself legally to do some things that give you freedom to stifle competition. So that's freedom, right? That I have now freedom to behave as a business in whatever way is best for my financial bottom line in the marketplace. So that's sort of a free market, but it goes against the very basis of the previous understanding of free market, is that anybody can participate and nobody has an advantage over somebody else and nobody has an established presence that is going to make it so that their terrible crap is more highly favored than somebody else's good product or innovative solution. So how can these two things both be free market if they're entirely opposed to one another? So that's what I've been struggling with today. Is what do we really mean when we talk about free markets? And can we come up with some better language for this stuff? And can we decide what it is that we actually value as a society about free markets? And does it really even hinge on the preference of how we evaluate businesses. Uh, which goes back to there are winners and losers in the marketplace. There are businesses that make money. There are businesses that bleed money. There are businesses that eventually go bankrupt. There are businesses that are eventually mergers is one of them. Get bought out by another service for having performed so well and become part of their empire against competition. So there are necessarily economic winners and losers. And a lot of people in my generation believe that this is fundamentally wrong. And I get that because we see extremes in winners and losers that are probably morally repugnant, morally intolerable, morally untenable. But the truth is, there will always be winners and losers. There will always be somebody whose lemons were a little more sour, and so they didn't sell as much lemonade. There will always be somebody whose lemons were a little more sweet, and so they sold more lemonade. There will be people who have to wrap up and go home and try something else, do it all over again. There will be people who risk and bet a lot, and it doesn't turn out. But in a free market, the idea is you get to try again. You get to keep going. Determination should win the day. But anyway, again, free market. What does this mean? Where are we actually placing the value? What is acceptable? Is it focused on the ability to participate in the marketplace? Is that the idea? Is free market a descriptor of people doing business, or is free market more of a descriptor of the exchange of money? Because that totally different world. How money flows. And putting designs on that is a very different conversation than how we do business. Same world, but different layer, different domain. So if free market is about what sort of business practices that can we abide, then we have to make a decision on what that means. We probably have to come up with our language about it. We have to understand that there's a problem with our current language. We have to come to a common understanding of where we all are with respect to the new language. But if it's not about business, if it's more about economics and how money moves in a strict sense, divorced from doing business, then I don't know that we need to have a different discussion, I guess. But one way or another, I personally need to increase my understanding on the words free market. So that's some of the stuff that I've been thinking about today. What else? I know there was more. In the film Network, when we were watching it earlier, the first time that I saw it, there's a point where he says, "I'm mad as hell and I can't take it anymore." And I thought this was hilarious the first time I saw it, because I'm like, oh my gosh, here's a guy who is appealing to something in people, right? He's reaching in and he's grabbing the human condition, which is an important thing. Like, to be able to just feel where people are, that's power. There's a lot of power there. The problem is, watching it again, I didn't think it was funny, and I didn't think it was empowering. I thought it was scary, and I thought it was sad. And the reason is, what he was appealing to was anger, unrest, fear in a way, hatred in a way. This idea of, well, above all, just be mad. I don't know what to tell you to do. I don't know what to tell you to feel, but just be mad. This was a great boon for the network because his message was engaging. It was emotional. It caused people people clicked. Like, yeah, I think that's it. I think I'm mad. He's right. I like this guy. I like where he's at. And so it brought a lot of value to his brand. It brought a lot of value to his show. It brought a lot of value to the network hosting his show, and their share increased. But at the same time, the effect was this pervasive anger, which has consequences. It made me think of, there was a meme about, like, I think this is the time in history right before everything gets all like lines and arrows on the map. And that's true. Unrest and anger precedes inhumanity. So what was he really selling? What was the real outcome of this? And how does that relate to the human condition? Does that mean that we're always in a state of, as a creature, we're prone to uh, atrocity, and it just takes somebody reminding us of that? And in fact, the reason that we don't commit atrocity all the time is because usually only a couple of us are aware of our nature at any given time, and they're surrounded by a great many other people who aren't. And so when somebody gets all up in arms about, like, yeah, I'm going to kill everybody, they look around, they're like, oh, I seem to be the only one experiencing this. Maybe I got something wrong. But in this film, he challenges everybody to feel that way at the same time. Everybody looks around, everybody hears each other screaming. They're all screaming, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And then it's like, yeah, we're all mad and we're all going to do something about it. And then it's empowering. It's immensely empowering for people to go out and act um, atrociously. Uh, yeah, that's a very, I don't really want to go down that hole, that rabbit hole in this conversation. Brings me back to my book. I'll go get the book because I mentioned it last time and I didn't actually show it. It's over here somewhere. There it is. On Killing. This is the psychological cost of learning to kill in war and society. Traditionally, premise is traditionally in history, only something like 20% of active combatants in a war, in a conflict, actively engage the enemy. And what does that mean? Well, what's the phenomenon that's actually occurring there? That only 20% of people who hold guns fire them at the enemy, while the rest of people either pretend to be dead or run away, or more commonly provide that person ammo or provide care to their co-combatants. They're I could go on about that book, but in modern times, we have learned how to behaviorally condition soldiers to increase that to a stark degree. Something like 90% of military combatants now, given the proper training, can actually do fire on the enemy, actively engage them. So there was a period of time where the difference between a modern army and a non-modern army was incredibly significant, because some folks were working on from the position of natural human inclination, and other folks were working from the perspective of behavioral conditioning. And the behavioral conditioning made the soldier immensely more effective. But when we first learned to wield that tool, we really messed up. We did Vietnam, and we didn't realize that there was other stuff you needed to do to keep a person together psychologically once you subject them to that sort of behavioral conditioning. Because just because you can condition somebody to always pull a trigger doesn't mean that there's not still the same dance going on in their brain. And when they're subjected to dealing with that challenge of killing after the fact, it's potentially a lot worse for the individual than if they were to do that calculation before they shot. So we learned a lot about what you need to do after. You don't just need to behaviorally condition somebody up to the moment of pulling the trigger. There's a whole bunch of stuff that they then need to experience in order to justify their behavior and allow them to reintegrate with society. Crazy stuff, right? But in the context of a civil war, in the context of people just getting up and saying, I'm mad, I'm going to do something about it, when they don't have somebody telling them fire, when their commander or somebody with more stars on the shoulder than they have is telling them, this is right, this is what we need to do for country, when it's just, I'm upset and I'm going to do something, and you go to your closet or wherever and pull out a gun and rise up against somebody, there's a lot of individual calculation that needs to happen, because you are now individually responsible for your actions. So in those moments following the I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore, if you got to a point where that continued until people were out in the streets with weapons, rising up together against others for some reason because they were mad, it gets very complicated. It gets very complicated because all of those calculations about is what I am doing right, is what I am doing necessary, is what I am doing justified. Those are a case by case basis, and everybody's going to come to their own individual conclusion, and yet everybody's individual conclusion is going to affect everyone else's. So it becomes a dance of action and consequence, and it gets very, very psychologically damaging all around. Because not only are you affected by the people around you who are doing things, and you're affecting the people around you by the things that you do, but there's an enemy now that was previously not an enemy, and so their actions toward your force then have their own moral obligation. That in some case, I mean, you could call it vengeance or whatever, but when you're trying to make a decision of should I act violently, lethally against someone else for the things that I believe are right, that's a different equation from should I act against somebody who felt that their moral obligation was to kill one of mine. Like I said, the complexity increases and the entropy increases, and knowing the psychological trauma, the mass psychological trauma that results from these types of moments, my opinion of that scene, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore, changed drastically. I think I hear some footsteps. That's probably as good a place as any to wrap it up. I already talked for almost 27 minutes, and I don't need to continue down this path today. Free markets, network, unkilling. What else? There was other stuff today. I don't remember. I cut down some trees. I didn't have any thoughts about that. I just did it. What else? I'm going to call it. I don't have any more points that I particularly brought to discuss. I know there is something else, and I'll think about it later, but I'm not concerned. With that, I'll see you next time, probably on the other channel. Okay, good night.